As we officially kick off the WD Door Seminar Series, let us welcome the passionate man behind the name to share and to present to us the very first topic of WD Door Seminar Series titled Regenerative Agriculture. Dear colleagues, live viewers, and distinguished guests, let's once again call on Dr. William D. Dorr.
Salamat po. I will always treasure this honor and hoping that during this first formal seminar that we are now holding and that I have the honor to present a very important topic, not only critical to present times, but for the future. So the title, I hope is now projected, the title of my presentation today is Regenerative Agriculture, Feeding and Sustaining the World. So nakikita na ninyo yung importansya ng feeding and sustaining planet Earth to feed the world. Hindi lang para sa Pilipinas, but Philippines being a part of the planet, we have to be one with various countries to now embrace and fully institutionalize this paradigm of regenerative agriculture. Second slide. So the basic question that we have to ask ourselves is, in the future, how can we feed the ever-growing population with a healthy diet while preserving our natural ecosystems? So very important question, preserving the natural ecosystems and having to feed the world with a healthy diet. So yun ang pinaka framework and why we are presenting before you today the critical importance of regenerative agriculture. And I'll try to dissect what are the pillars and the components of regenerative agriculture meanwhile. Next slide. We have to look at the existing or the so-called first agricultural revolution. Ano ba yung characterization natin ng agricultural revolution na una? This is characterized by expansion and exploitation, feeding people at the expense of forests, wildlife, the water, and the soil. So, talagang extractive ang dating, hindi lang dating, but nangyayari itong klase ng first agricultural revolution. So what's the end result of this existing first agricultural revolution? It has destabilized the climate in the process. Diba? Mas mainit na ngayon. We have now reached beyond 1 degree centigrade more than the normal. And so the planet Earth is warming. So climate change is one major consideration why we need to take a look and embrace fully and institutionalize regenerative agriculture. Pwede bang mag-request ng lukewarm water na nakadito lang nearby? Kasi namamaos na tayo. So, what's the warm water na ito? So the conclusion that we can derive with all this characterization of the first agricultural revolution is that this is no longer an option this time around and in the future. So yun po ay very powerful statement na dapat baguhin na natin yung paradigm, yung pinaka-basic approach to growing and developing agriculture. Now, let's go to the next slide. What are the environmental effects of agriculture, the kind of the agriculture that we have during this first agricultural revolution? Okay? So, alam naman natin na doon tayo nagproduce ng pagkain para sa tao, and there are both beneficial and detrimental effects on the environment. And here are some of the negative environmental effects of agriculture. So, number one, deforestation. Diba? Halos yung forest natin sa Pilipinas ay wala na sa threshold na 40% forest cover because this has now been turned into agricultural areas. So there are about 11 million hectares of agricultural areas devoted to food production, of course including the seas where we have fishery or fish production. Now, the second one is as a result of the changing climate, the kind of agriculture that we practice, there's a lot of greenhouse gas emission. And this is contributing to the warming of the planet. So we need to look at, if we have now to say, look at how we can minimize greenhouse gas emission, then look at the kind of agricultural practices that we have to pursue so that we do not necessarily contribute to these greenhouse gas emissions. The third one is loss of biodiversity. As we have said, we have much of this deforestation happening, and as a result of that, there is loss of biodiversity, and even in agricultural areas, there is massive monocropping. And if you look at the rice tariffication law, the RCEP, there is consideration and, looking at the opportunity to diversify the cropping system. So crop diversification is necessary under a new paradigm called regenerative agriculture. Now, even our soils have been degraded. Halos nawala na ng organic matter from a high of 12 to 15% to a low of about 1 to 2%. And once you have this low organic matter, you can see how production can happen, meaning there is low productivity. Now, climate change, as I've already mentioned, is a major factor, environmental effect of agriculture. Agriculture contributes significantly to the warming of the planet. So another one to highlight is as a result of all of this, deforestation, loss of biodiversity, then water scarcity and even water pollution happens. So ang dami po ang kailangan natin na i-consider dito po sa bagong paradigm called regenerative agriculture to reduce significantly these environmental effects. Now, next slide. We'll highlight the Sustainable Development Goals. Diba? If you look at agriculture, it is almost in every of these Sustainable Development Goals. But there are those very specific, like hunger, poverty, climate change, health, water. So the consideration for now imbibing or embracing regenerative agriculture as the new agriculture is also anchored on these sustainable development goals. Next slide. So, in effect, as a result of all of what I've said, it is now incumbent upon all of us and much more the research institutions like the Bureau of Agricultural Research being the oversight of R&D coordination in the Department of Agriculture to trailblaze the practice So now, the Bureau of Agricultural Research must now pursue this leadership in many ways, being the research arm of the Department of Agriculture, coordinating all the R4D work of the various departments, including our partners from SUCs and other institutions, to now put forward more systematically this second agricultural revolution, and this is all about regenerative agriculture. So at the end of my presentation, there will be one major recommendation. Cannot the Bureau of Agricultural Research consider its priorities and agenda anchored on regenerative agriculture? And I will be mentioning later on that there is no competition between the regenerative agriculture with that of modern science. And when I talk of modern science, I'm referring to, say, molecular science or crop improvement or breed improvement or digital technology, precision agriculture, and the like. Next slide. So the context with which regenerative agriculture is necessary is that it rehabilitates the entire ecosystem. So yung agro-ecosystem, yung agroecology is rehabilitated with the relevant regenerative agricultural practices that we can use in a big way, in a scale. And so it is necessary to now adopt regenerative agriculture as the framework. Now, it strengthens resilience against climate change. Dati-dati, mayroon na tayong konsepto ng agroecology agriculture or agroecological agriculture. But that ang consideration ng agroecological agriculture is up to sustainability concern. But with regenerative agriculture, it's beyond sustainability, but now consider resiliency as the main characteristic. It can blend with sustainable innovation with tradition. So indigenous knowledge, all these appropriate practices, those technologies along those lines. And I would like to go to the next slide because these are the main pillars of regenerative agriculture that we must have a basic understanding. And this will guide us in many ways in pursuing programs along the lines of this regenerative agriculture. Next slide is on the main pillars, and let's tackle biodiversity. We need, when you talk of regenerative agriculture, one of the pillars is increasing biodiversity. We need really to diversify the highly monocrop system that we have. Crop diversification is necessary even in rice-based farming system. You can have high-value crops, high-value agriculture after the rice. And so this is one way to diversify. And there are many practices as well to improve the biodiversity of the ecosystem. The next one is all related to soil health and water management, water resources management. These are two basic things that we have to consider. Bringing back soil health, because today, as I've said earlier, our soils are now degraded to the point of having no or less production or low productivity from time to time. And so it is necessary to bring back the basic elements in terms of, say, organic matter content and building up the microbiome inside the soil, because they can also produce the nutrients needed by the plants. So again, soil health is key under regenerative agriculture. Water management. In the light of climate change, there will be physical scarcity of water resources in the very future. And so it is now incumbent upon all of us to efficiently utilize water resources that we have today, because models of the climate change panel have indicated that the water resources will decline in some areas over the world. Now, diversified cropping is now one way of improving the crop production system, so that we not only produce single commodity crop all these years, year in, year out. So it is necessary to pursue diversified cropping in many ways. Livestock integration is key. This is the case where you have, every household is involved in livestock production. And properly done, the waste of livestock can be utilized to improve soil health. And that is one of the other pillars that I'm highlighting now, the waste management. The manures that the livestock or animals produce can be properly utilized to improve and or rejuvenate soil health. Now, next slide. I'd like to now highlight, may diferensya ba ang regenerative agriculture with modern science and technology? There's none. There is that powerful synergy needed between the two. And for example, we are always talking about water resources to be scarce. So modern science, through molecular science, can now target to develop drought-resistant crops for that matter. So hindi magkahiwalay yon. The crop improvement strategies can be more focused if you consider the very problems brought about by the Industrial Revolution that we have talked earlier, and to consider the very pillars of regenerative agriculture. So again, let me mention that when we talk of regenerative agriculture, which is focusing on rejuvenating and enhancing ecosystems, frequently draws inspiration from agroecological farming. So combining the two leads us to more resilient agriculture. Now, modern science and technology, like for example, molecular science, precision agriculture, digital technology applications, the use of drones, and many are very important as complementary technologies to enhancing regenerative agriculture. Now, let me go to the examples of applicable technologies of regenerative agriculture. Let me start with balanced fertilization. You know, when I was Secretary of Agriculture, this is one we were starting already to institutionalize in a big way balanced fertilization, the use of biologicals, lessening the use of chemical fertilizers, the use of manures, again, with the whole intent to bring back the kind of soil health that we so desire to prop up and boost productivity of agricultural crops. So it would be good also for policy individuals in the Department of Agriculture. For example, I was in Vietnam about 4 months ago, and they have a target, say, of lowering the use of chemical fertilizer from this year to that year by, say, 20%, and to another set of targets, say, 50% reduction. Dito sa ating bansa, sa atin sa Pilipinas, sa atin sa Philippine agriculture, ay wala pa rin ganun na policy targets. So we have to learn from our neighbors. Maybe we can do that even under the program on climate change, Nina. Yung mga ganitong regenerative agriculture, you know, you can bank on regenerative agriculture as the way forward, as the framework to manage and mitigate, adapt with climate change. Next slide. With water resources lacking, you know, we need now to embrace and scale up the use of more efficient irrigation systems. Hindi na kagaya ngayon yung open canal system sa rice farming. That is the old technology. Now there are better technologies, piping system, for example, in the distribution of water for rice production. You have now new technologies, and the country that we can learn from in terms of irrigation for agriculture is Israel. Of course, there are many other countries that are into this kind of technology development. But yes, it is really key that we now start piloting. After a certain time, we need to scale up and use these more efficient irrigation systems. Next example is IPM. It's just like chemical fertilizer. We need to reduce the use of pesticides. And the Department of Agriculture has been doing this. But yung IPM parang off and on na ginagamit ng DA. Dapat i-regularize natin yung paggamit nitong mga proven technologies so that we contribute to lessening chemical agriculture. Mayroon naman good substitute ng chemical agriculture. But here, if you ask me the question, can we go 100%? That's why balanced fertilization is reducing to certain extent the use of chemical fertilizer and paving the way for biological fertilizers and or manures to be, increasingly be used. The same is true for IPM. Dapat chemicals will only be utilized as the last resort, and that has been the principle with which IPM is being projected. The next one is the next example of regenerative agriculture practice for rice production is alternate wetting and drying technique. Because hindi naman kailangan ng tubig na nakasubmerge yung rice plant 365 days or that period of growth of 110 days. There is, alternate wetting and drying, and this is one way to really now consider the use of lesser water to produce a kilo of palay. Of course, there are maybe other considerations in having this alternate wetting and drying. For example, whether our fields are having properly leveled. I mean, because that's one way to manage water resources efficiently. So I think even the Bayer, even the big companies are now promoting in a big way alternate wetting and drying. How I wish that we in the Philippines consider this in a big way in our rice industry development program. Now, the next one is precision farming. Ito nga yung synergy na sinasabi ko na pwede rin greenhouse farming, yung precision agriculture na pinopromote ng Israel. This can really manage water resources much more, including the use of lesser volume of chemicals to have the best quality of produce. So it is complementary to the soil and water and biodiversity basis of regenerative agriculture. The next one is molecular breeding. And let's say that the molecular breeding is targeting what are the requirements for regenerative agriculture. Water, for one. So, kailangan natin drought resistant traits to be embedded into, your breeding. Pag in terms of pests and diseases, yung pest tolerant na traits naman ang i-consider. So there's no discussion about whether or not they are in synergy or they are in complementarity. They are very much focused, meaning yung molecular breeding, these are the new science tools that you can use to solve those problems within the pillars of regenerative agriculture. Now, what are the next slide will now identify some of the economic benefits of regenerative agriculture. And after the next slide will now highlight the climate resiliency benefit that is being enhanced to particularly when there are droughts and floods contributing to more stable crop yields. So yun, climate resiliency is developed and stable yields will be will have stable yields, and so at the end of the day, we are boosting the productivity of our crops. Then the other benefit that can lower the cost of production is cost-efficient inputs. So yung balanced fertilization, yung IPM, are all good practices. There are also agronomic practices that can lower the cost of inputs. Yung green manuring, yung crop rotation, yung intercropping. All these are some of the examples of regenerative agriculture. But sorry to say that in a big way, we are not practicing those today. So we need to bring back systematically, properly planned, so that the consideration to restoring soil health, the consideration for efficiently managing and using water resources, and improving the biodiversity, then it will be a big consideration. The next one is increased yields, of course, because of the growing population of the country, if not the world. We need to, from time to time, look at opportunities to increase the yields. You know, there are many strategies to do that. Increase the yield by way of harnessing the power of agronomic practices, all these breeding considerations, and at the end of the day, we are really leveling up productivity of agriculture. The next economic benefit, next slide please, is the production of healthy and nutritious foods. So, kailangan natin na consider yung kailangan ng population. Like for example, yung vegetable production sa Benguet. Dati-dati, ang daming gumagamit sila ng pesticide para lang makontrol yung diamond backmoth. To the point na talagang sobrang-sobra ang paggamit. What is the consequence? The health of those who will consume this produce will suffer. So let's try to be considerate in looking at every opportunity that it is based on regenerative agriculture so that we are able to produce healthy and nutritious food. Now, the next part of my presentation, I think this will be part of the last, is to identify what are existing global initiatives, okay, in regard to regenerative agriculture. Next slide, please. This is the One Planet Business for Biodiversity. So there is a global effort between and among countries looking at opportunity and guided by this framework for regenerative agriculture. So, nandyan yung mga pillars na sinabi ko na kanina. I need not go through them again because it is such a repetition of what I have already mentioned. The very pillars of regenerative agriculture are considered, although this framework followed by OP2B is much broader because it considers other aspects. Okay, next slide is the action agenda that have been arrived at recently at COP28. Okay, and COP28 aims to work together in the lead up to COP30 to overcome the key challenges and jointly accelerate the transition towards future-proof food and agriculture systems. So yun, itong regenerative agriculture is a future proofing of the agriculture that we want for the present and next generation. And these are the objectives: scaling up adaptation and resilience activities, promoting food security and nutrition, supporting workers in agriculture and food systems, strengthening the integrated management of water in agriculture and food systems at all levels, and maximizing the climate and environmental benefits. So what about here in the Philippines? Ano naman yung Philippine initiatives in regard to regenerative agriculture? And this is, next slide will highlight mostly what is now being pursued by a number of private companies. So the private companies locally and even globally are now part of the bandwagon to institutionalize and practice uh, regenerative agriculture. So Unilever Philippines adopts the following principles of regenerative agriculture: those that have positive impacts from agricultural practices on soil health, water, and air quality, carbon capture, and biodiversity. Also, enabling local communities to protect and improve their environment and well-being. Produce crops with sufficient yield and nutritional quality to meet existing and future needs, optimize the use of renewable resources, and they are also working with a wide variety of stakeholders on targeted programs to implement regenerative farming practices while protecting, conserving, and restoring natural ecosystems. The next slide, please. About Nestle Philippines. I have been in interaction with Nestle Philippines, and they are very, very upfront in promoting and practicing regenerative agriculture in the coffee farms that they have, and also with the farmers that they are partnering. So again, the private sector really are taking the way, taking the lead in terms of uh, innovating the kind of agriculture that we have to have, and that is regenerative agriculture. So the next question to us, next slide. The next question to us, so what should our future farms look like? So ito yung consideration, ito yung nakikita natin. One that takes good care of us, meaning people and planet together. Hindi pang planet lang, nawala yung consideration for people. And one that feeds humanity within the environmental limits of the earth. So, let's visualize na ito yung klaseng agriculture na gusto natin para sa tao, pagkain ng tao, para sa planet natin. So yun, we have to really work harder na yung idagdag natin yung natural ecosystems ay rejuvenated. Para sa ganun, tao, planeta, natural ecosystems or resources are rejuvenated. Next slide. So how do we get there? Two messages I'm leaving for the Bureau of Agricultural Research and all the institutions, including individual pursuit. Number one is for BAR. Although you have just launched your research priorities or the research priorities and agenda for these next 5 years, I would urge you to consider bringing much more systematically regenerative agriculture into your priorities and agenda. Kasi ito yung ito yung mga components or innovations na dapat natin ilunsad na, and the fruits of those R&D like technologies and innovations can be utilized to upscale regenerative agriculture. Now, so that's the second message, upscaling those practices already proven to be the kinds of regenerative agriculture that we need to have. So yun, if I were Bar, one thing to consider is, for example, put up a program on regenerative agriculture R&D with the other objective of scaling up, showcasing already this in a big way. So this is a technology-based upscaling program that the Bureau of Agricultural Research can pursue and lead with the participation of the R&D network. So lastly, last slide, I would like to thank again the Bureau of Agricultural Research for relaunching the BAR online seminar series and name it after me. I would always treasure this honor, and again, thank you to all. Good morning. I can receive questions if there are. Yeah.
Alright. Muli marami pong salamat, Dr. Dar. Palakpakan po natin ulit si Dr. Dar for sharing with us the topic, regenerative agriculture. At para magkaroon naman ng quick pause at makainom po ng tubig si Sector, and we are trying to check if we have questions on our live stream. Paki-follow po at paki-share din po itong live stream. And then para po sa ating mga viewers, the feedback form shall be posted in a while para makatanggap po kayo ng certificate of attendance. Ayan. Alright. So, I guess we are now ready to proceed to the next part. Ang maganda po dito, yung live viewers po natin sa live stream, halo-halo po. We have students, we have experts, we also have our partners in the local government units, so on. So, normally, dun sa online seminar series natin dati, we're actually accommodating heterogeneous questions. Good thing, physically, may mga kasama rin po tayong technical staff coming from PMIL, coming from KMISD. We also have some from PDD because I heard meron pong ongoing na activity. So, while we're waiting for some questions maybe from the live stream, do we have questions from our live audience? Ayan, meron pong isa kanina nagsabi na po, si Engineer Kenny po.
Hi, Doc Dar. Good morning po. I'm Kenny Bral Mendez po from the Program Monitoring and Evaluation Linkaging Division po. My question po, sir, is that with your presentation po, the regenerative agriculture, I'd like to know po, since our office is also implementing the scale-up program. Ito pong program na ito is aiming to improve the productivity, profitability, and competitiveness po of our Filipino farmers, and we're doing many activities that aims to create a sustainable and of course progressive a community for our rural farmers while conserving po the natural resources of our environment. And then PhilRice is also having an initiative on the alternate wetting and drying technique in collaboration with SHERCA and other partner institutions, and also funded by international funding institution. And also NEDA is taking initiatives toward addressing the El Nino effects po. That is, I think, maglalas pa ata even until 2025. Sir, I'd like to know, sir, how do these initiatives of these government agencies differ po from the RA principles that you were talking about po? Thank you po.
Okay, maganda. You are very clear. The very problem today is, I was highlighting the shifting of paradigms. Although you have some initiatives here and there, that's a good start. But already mounting and deciding that the kind of agriculture that we need to further grow and develop is this kind of regenerative agriculture. So almost all the research priorities and agenda that you have must be under the framework of regenerative agriculture. So I'm not saying you are not doing, but have more institutionalization, the broadening of the framework utilization based on regenerative agriculture. Naintindihan? Okay. So, if you go to existing projects, for example, funded by BAR, mag-checklist ka, is this, wala kang nabanggit about resiliency. So that's the bottom line. At the end of the day, are those technologies resilient for the future of agriculture? So hindi lang hanggang sustainability. Resiliency is much higher than sustainability. Okay. So pag nag-i-evaluate na kayo ng research programs, kung na-deklara na ninyo na ang paradigm na natin and has to be known by everyone, ay regenerative agriculture, and in synergy with the modern science and tools, then the research proposals will align themselves to that. Hindi na lang, chemical testing na naman ng fertilizers na 100%, yung use of pesticides 100%, di walang regenerative agriculture doon. Yun ang ibig sabihin.
Alright, thank you so much. Marami pong sa katanungan, Engineer Kenny, and salamat din po sa pag-respond sa katanungan. We have another question from Miss Irish.
Good morning, sir. Sir, ako po pala si Irish, isa sa mga writers po here sa office po. So, yung question ko po ay based from the perspective of the efforts of the government agencies to reduce plastic, which for me is somehow covers the principles of regenerative agriculture. So, should we discontinue the use of plastic entirely? Ang example ko po dito is yung mga plastic mulches in strawberry fields. So, yun po. What are your thoughts on this po?
Ang stand ko dyan, we develop plastics that are degradable. Once they are degraded, they can be forming part of the organic matter of the soil. So that's the way forward.
Okay po.
Hindi lang yung klaseng plastic ngayon na hindi ma-degrade. So that will be pollution.
Thank you po.
Thank you, Miss Irish. So I've heard, I can actually connect yung biopolymer po, yung mga plastic na parang after some time ay mabubulok siya because it's basically made of organic compounds. Thank you, Miss Irish. Do we still have questions from our audience here? Questions po? Ayan, from Paula.
Sir, good morning po.
Morning.
So, we are very much, ako personally, na-challenge ako dun sa presentation ni Sir, Regenerative Agriculture. Sir, kasi, realistically, ang BAR naman, we have a very limited budget for research. And knowing yung mga strategies na present nyo po, we really have to, if we adhere doon sa presentation nyo, we really, sabi nyo nga, we really have to prioritize. Based doon po sa mga strategies na present nyo, kasi nakita ko kasi dapat concerted efforts, nandyan ang soils, Bureau of Soils, irrigation, so ang dami. So, yun nga, yung sabi ko, we have a very limited budget for bar. So, which one? Kasi they all contribute, di ba sir? They all contribute to the regenerative agriculture. So, if bar would prioritize, alin kaya doon ang uunahin? Kasi nandyan ang, infra, irrigation, livestock. So, alin po kaya? So, yun
Okay,
po.
so we are not veering away kung bar ang mag-initiate. We are not veering away from the mandate of generating technologies or developing technologies and innovations. Ang sinasabi ko lang ay lahat na sanad na nandun sa priorities and agenda ng bar ay tinutumbok niya yung regenerative agriculture paradigm at looking at modern science complementarily with regenerative agriculture. Now, limited budget. That's why we need priority setting because of limited budget. Hindi naman talagang masyado marami. But when you are able to articulate to the DA system, kasi may kanya-kanyang budget dun sa mga programa, research budget also. So it's a matter of influencing, advocating itong regenerative agriculture. Kasi dapat yung system, concerted efforts, sabi mo nga, dapat we embrace this so that the limited budget that we have, bar and all the parts of the system, will now focus on this, boosting productivity, profitability, and consideration for sustainability, resilience, and rejuvenation of the natural ecosystem. Yun ang mga parameters mo.
Thank you, Ma'am Paula, and thank you, Dr. Dor. Okay, we still have a question from our viewer. Ayan, so the question is, good morning, Sector. What can individual farmers like us contribute in promoting regenerative agriculture in our respective localities?
Pakiulit.
What can individual farmers like us contribute in promoting regenerative agriculture in our respective localities?
How can individual farmers, ang aking suggestion ay you have to start practicing regenerative agriculture. Examples have been given and there are many other practices in pursuing regenerative agriculture. So wag na yung 100% chemical, that's one way. Reduce it to 50%, that's the balanced fertilization strategy. Yung IPM could be one good way to reduce pesticide cost by practicing IPM. Yung paggamit ng mga manures, ibabalik sa kalupaan. Those are very practical approaches to start the momentum, to build up the momentum in practicing regenerative agriculture.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the question, Sir Bernard Panabang. Another question is from Ma'am Abram Bakit Oriarte. RA is what we need really. But the question would not like what we are advocating for quite some time. Susag, that still remains a dream for the many. This is a comment?
Yeah, he is supporting the paradigm of regenerative agriculture. Ang sinasabi niya, very slow tayo mag-adapt. Comment yun.
A follow-up question po, Dr. Dor, from Bernard Panabang. One of the problems in my locality is the lack of water. What can regenerative agriculture teach us to solve this problem?
Okay. every year, there is rainfall in our respective areas. Diba, may ulan. Dapat sahod ulan ang isang major practice. Kasi nga, in India, they have only a rainfall of 700 millimeters a year. In where I stayed for 15 years. Dito sa atin, more than 2,000 millimeters of rainfall a year. At hindi natin sinasahod ito. Meaning, we have to have more water impounding ponds. Yung sweep, yung farm reservoir and the like. We have to, kahit individual farmers, pwede naman sila sahod ulan na practicing smaller scale itong water harvesting techniques.
Ayan, thank you. So Sir Bernard, ang sagot po ay rainwater harvesting. At kayang-kaya daw pong gawin kahit ng mga local farmers. Ano? Do we have other questions from our live stream? Wala na po? Another comment. We are organic agriculture advocates, but the government institutions handling organic farming still recommend using fertilizers with synthetic ingredients and even posted in the Philippine Government Electronics Procurement Systems website. Seldom we see certified organic fertilizers posted for the bidding. So yun po ang kanyang comment, Dr. Dar.
Yeah, commentary yun. But let me put my position on organic agriculture. Yung sinasabi nila ay 100% paggamit ng organic inputs. There is space for that. There is needs for that. But if you apply 100% to the whole country, ay kulang tayo ng mga, for example, compost. Kulang yung biomass mo. Kulang yung raw materials mo. So we encourage, we support, kasi mayroon naman batas ng Organic Agriculture Act in the Philippines targeting ilan hektarya. So let's support that. But our consideration in this presentation is how can you feed the whole country, if not the world?
Okay. Do we have other comments? Wala na. How about our live audience? Do we still have any question? Yes, Engineer Bernadette.
Good morning, Dr. Dar. We all know naman po that the department and its attached bureaus have been doing various research po, no, for to come up with these best practices for our farmers and fisher folk. With this po, since may mga viewers din po tayong farmers, what do you think po kaya are the major barriers preventing this regenerative agriculture from taking off as part of the department's key priorities for implementation under different programs and initiatives of the government? Thank you po.
You know, even at the highest level, there should be appreciation of this paradigm of regenerative agriculture. Kung wala, then down the line, parang individual efforts, kukunti yung magagawa natin. That's why this question is related to the other question kanina, na concerted efforts lahat yan. And that's why I'm starting with BAR to review your priorities and agenda, although na-publish na yan, but is that couched under regenerative agriculture with modern science? Yun ang tanungin natin. If not, then I would go for its revision eventually. Para focus yung maliit na budget dito po sa ano pa yung technologies ng pangangailangan ng regenerative agriculture. Hindi lahat ay na-innovate na. Hindi lahat ay naandyan na. That's why the research is so important ay talagang i-focus mo na yung budget na mayroon ka.
Thank you, Dr. Dor, and thank you for the question, Engineer Bernadette. Do we still have any more questions? Meron pa po? We have one from our live audience, viewer rather. The question is from Emily Chen. How long will these regenerative agriculture approaches or programs reach the knowledge of our farmers, lalo na sa pinakamaliliit sa magsasaka, at assurance na maisakatuparan nga? Salamat po.
That's why kanina sinasabi ko, kung hindi ini-embrace ng DA leadership, matagal. So even the programs that are existing today in DA, they must embrace the principles of regenerative agriculture para darating na yan sa mga magsasaka. And I was also suggesting nung closing part ng presentation ko, why not consider putting up a program to scale up itong existing technologies ng regenerative agriculture para makita na in a big way, yung scaling up thousands of hectares, hindi 1 hectare here, 1 hectare there. Hindi na pwede yung ganun na scaling up.
Okay, salamat po, Dr. Dor and Ms. Chen. Any more questions from our live audience and from our viewers online? Wala na? Okay, siguro ito na lang po, no? Ito po ay question ko naman po bilang isa sa mga writers din po ng opisinang ito. If I captured it right, sabi natin kanina, Dr. Dar, yung regenerative agriculture ay agricultural revolution 2.0. So my first question is, how do we differentiate sustainable agriculture po with regenerative agriculture? And my next question is, kumaga, fast tracking. Kung proven na maganda at malaki yung maiaambag ng regenerative agriculture sa ating bansa, the question is, handa na po kaya talaga by all means ang ating bansa to embrace totally regenerative agriculture? If not, ano po kaya yung mga key areas or important steps na dapat i-take ng Pilipinas so that eventually we have embraced regenerative agriculture?
I have mentioned already that sustainable agriculture is one of the goals of present and even the rest of the world. But because of climate change, we need to elevate the goal. And the additional goal is resiliency. Resilient agriculture through regenerative agriculture. So yun ang pinaka-difference nila. So we embrace the good sustainable agricultural practices into the regenerative practices, but considering, again, focusing on the 4 to 5 pillars of regenerative agriculture. Kagaya yung, again, going always to paggamit ng chemicals. Doon sa sustainable agriculture, hindi naman binabawalan yung paggamit ng chemicals. Dito sa regenerative agriculture, mayroon limitasyon at may indication na we need to reduce it 50% hanggat makabuo tayo ng biological control or other means of controlling and or even sustaining the soil health. There are many other practices that can be practiced. Ano pa yung question mo?
The last question po is, handa na ba ang Pilipinas to embrace
That's why
regenerative?
ginigising natin ng Pilipinas through this seminar series. And that's why BAR has to come strong and in saying that this is the kind of agriculture that we need today, tomorrow, and the future. Yun, dapat matagal na tayo nagdi-discuss sa climate change. Lahat ito, nandyan na ang regenerative agriculture as the approach, as the paradigm to consider all these things relevant to sustainable development goals and the climate change impacts.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dor. Do we have pahabol pa po? Questions? Wala na po? Alright, with that, palakpakan po natin ang ating resource speaker. We are very blessed na ang speaker po natin, who is also the man behind the WD-DAR Seminar Series, ay kasama po natin responding to the questions and presenting and sharing his expertise with us. Once again, palakpakan po natin Dr. William D. Dar. Maraming pong salamat. Thank you po.